Hello, hello. Looks like we're live. It's nice to see everybody. My name is Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Today we are going to be discussing Taurus rising. Bring, 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 ding, 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 ding. Got these fancy buttons here on this side. Nice to see you, everybody. It's nice to be back after a little tiny break I've had. Now, for those who are watching, I've recently been doing some stuff. I've got a website. You can catch me on dustincormier.com/subscribe, where you can subscribe to my email list. And there you'll be able to get informed about when I do new series, as well as, in particular, I'm writing a lot of books right now. I'm doing an astrology book, as well as some novels. So subscribe there if you'd like to hear about those. Now, this is a live session. So anybody who wants to be a part of this session can, of course, join in. I'm just getting our live chat going now. Today we will be discussing all things about Taurus rising. I love Taurus rising. I'm a Scorpio myself. And all the rising signs in this series go through a big master class. So today is no exception. We're going to be going through the bones of what makes up the symbol of Taurus. We're going to talk about the deities that align with Taurus from the ancient Vedas. It's going to be through Ernst Wilhelm's book. And eventually we are going to also discuss all things related to Taurus as the rising sign lord, talking about the planets that rule each of its houses. Now I'm just noticing that I got to go from Aries to Taurus here. Yeah, so I'll do that in a moment. So for all you watching, hang out with me here. We've got a long video to go through. Let's start connecting. Let's start digging into the bulk of our lesson here today. And the first thing we're going to start with is discussing what Taurus's lord, Venus, is all about archetypally as a planet. So, this is our symbolism of the planetary glyphs. These symbols make up the building blocks of what we see in astrological symbols. The basic building blocks of the planetary glyphs are represented by the following. I'm just getting my video up here. Whoopsie. Okay, so these are the basic building blocks. You'll notice, like, for example, we have the circle, the crescent, and the cross. Venus is, of course, the circle and the cross. And Mercury is made up of the same thing, but it's got these moon horns. So you'll notice Jupiter is a cross with a moon on top. Saturn is a cross with a moon on the bottom. And being on the bottom or the top has something to do, it says something about the symbol. It's interesting, that there was a time when Mars was considered to be an upside-down Venus symbol, the holy hand grenade. That was with the cross on top of the circle. But Venus is the circle on top. So what does it mean when we see a circle in a planetary glyph? The circle represents that which is boundless, eternal, infinite, without beginning and without end. It's often represented by the serpent swallowing its own tail. So this is the spirit, which shows that Venus is an important planet when it comes to the spirit. Now the cross, because of course we see with Venus, the circle is on top of the cross, right? The cross is found, wherever the cross is found, it symbolizes earth living. The cross is the opposition between the human and the divine. It's the signature of our planet. We're the rebel angels that set our will against the will of God in order to learn to be gods in our own right. So there's an important earthly individuation happening wherever we find the cross. This tells us something about Venus as its individuating principle. It has to do with our personality, our emotions. Our earth life is very much a part of what Venus symbolizes. So the circle of spirit above the cross of matter, this represents the spirit overcoming matter through love. That's why Taurus and Libra can be so good at getting through difficulties, serving others for the sake of love. It also shows the importance of Taurus as the earthier of the two, loving whatever they do, really enjoying it, actually enjoying whatever job, whatever thing it is that they're doing. It allows them to overcome matter. Venus is the power of cohesion and attraction, and it draws things together in a synthesis. Venus draws itself through the magnetic attracting power of love. Venus is a feminine, receptive force, and it never compels issues. Hopefully you guys can see me here. Yes, just checking. It seduces rather than forces things. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, as Venus would say. Venus uses the power of persuasion in a quiet, gentle way. It rules personal affection, where the higher octave of Venus, which is Neptune, rules divine compassion. So Venus is personal, person-to-person type of affection, whereas Neptune is more of that divine sense of love. You know, love is literally a 4-letter word. The Greeks have as many names for love as the indigenous Americans have for snow. Now, in a personal chart, in your natal chart, Venus represents social urges, affection, beauty, values, what we appreciate. You know, Venus is an earth and air planet. It rules art, attraction and cohesion, melody and song, a lot of art, a lot of singing, has a love of luxury, and Venus rules the Venus blood. In the higher creative centers, it also rules the throat and larynx. Now, this is Isabel Hickey's correlation of Venus with Taurus and the throat and singing. It's funny, there are many ways to describe the anatomy of the body. Venus ruling Taurus is going to relate with that throat and larynx. So now we're going to take a little look at what it can be expected from Taurus rising. When you have Taurus rising, I'm going to do this for now. Taurus rising, like all the rising signs, every rising sign has a nature that you can read about in, various books and kind of get a sense of the overall picture of the rising sign. We're going to read, when we dig into Taurus, a little bit about the nature of what makes Taurus tick. How is it different from Libra, having Venus as its ruler, being the earthier side of Venus. So let's read a little bit for now. We're going to begin our first reading with Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabel M. Hickey. And again, this is just to give us a little taste of what's the overall picture, what's going on with Taurus here. What's the overall picture? What can be expected from Taurus ascendant on the whole, as a personality, as a character? Let's start digging into the character arcs here. So we have Taurus on the ascendant. This person is strong, stable, and stubborn. They are slow in reflexes. They're usually quiet until they're pushed too far, and then there is trouble. Taurus, being this fixed earth sign, is not really looking to rock any boat. But as we'll hear throughout this reading about Taurus, Taurus doesn't want to rock the boat. In order for the boat not to be rocked, sometimes you gotta rock all the other boats around in order that your boat is not rocked. So this is kind of the nature of Venus, is to bring things into personal comfort and cohesion. You have to be a little bit, roll your shoulders up and strong arm the world around you in order to bring things into that cohesion. So Taurus tends to be quiet, doesn't want to rock the boat until they are pushed too far. And then there will be trouble to be had. Taurus overall has a generally passive personality. They're quiet and unassuming as a rule. It's just generally how they are. Taurus is very possessive and fixed in their convictions. When they have a conviction about something, they're fixed on it. They're fixated. They're really going to go for it. They cannot be pushed, but they can be coaxed, like a bull. You know, the bull, you try and push them, and they're just going to plod. Oh, I'm getting pushed. All right. You know, they can't be pushed, but they can be led. They can be coaxed into things. They're open to things working better. They just got to know that it's working better. And if you're pushing an agenda on them, they're like, yeah, I can see why this is not going to be good for me. You're pushing me to do something. If we're going to work together to make something good for both of us, you got to show me some of that honey. Again, Taurus cannot be driven per se, but they can be led. Now, Taurus rising is practical. They've got a good financial sense. They're affectionate. They're good workers, but they cannot be hurried. And especially if the sun is not well placed for a Taurus, they are good workers, but they have a pace. And sometimes it frustrates them to have to change their pace on the job if it need be. It's more with Taurus sun that they have that difficulty. Taurus rising overall does what the job needs to do, but they don't prefer to be hurried. They can have difficulty with studying things, due to a slow pace of mind. But what they do study, they study very deeply. They can get a very deep, nuanced grasp of things. Taurus rising can be inclined to put on weight, for there's a love of good food here. They're short, they've got a thick neck with a square type of body. They're not aggressive. They are patient and long-suffering. They can go for a long time, hitting the bag, hitting whatever the one thing is that they're doing in order to develop whatever skills, whatever conquest they're slowly looking to defeat or conquer. They can be unreasonable, and they can be prejudiced when they are pushed too far. Jealousy must be conquered if Venus or Mars is afflicted for Taurus rising. We can especially see for Taurus rising that Venus rules the first house and the 8th house, which has this rather complicated sense of, this Taurus is really living for the connections that it makes, that attaches it to better abundance, better power. Because the same planet that rules the first house also rules the 8th house. I got to get this picture on here, so let's just bite the bullet here. You have to excuse me. So, here we go. Taurus rising. Just to give you a little glimpse of what we're talking about here. With Taurus rising, the first lord, Taurus, in the rising sign, is ruled by Venus. Scorpio rules the 7th house, so Libra rules the 8th house. This is the whole sign system, the whole sign house system. So Venus ruling the first house and the 8th house gives us a little bit of an inclination here to understand how Taurus can have to deal with jealousy. It's unstable with its own identity because it leans its whole identity on the connections that it makes. Scorpio is similar in a way because the identity of the first house is connected to the 8th house connections that it makes. And when one of those connections are messed up, you're really messing with my whole identity here, pal, right? Mars rules the 7th house and the 12th house for a Taurus. So, of course, the 7th house and the 12th house, Taurus is like Scorpio. It's almost got a stinger, and it dies in its connections. It surrenders completely to the connections that it makes because the 12th house, which is about surrender, is tied in with the 7th house because they're both ruled by Mars. Aries in the 12th house, Scorpio in the 7th house. And that's a similar thing where a deep sense of inner peace comes when Taurus connects with somebody. And Taurus rising can be very forgiving. They're more loyal than probably the most loyal sign. They're fixed earth. The second most loyal sign would probably be Scorpio. But Scorpio is loyal because of how damaging it is to be backstabbed. Taurus doesn't like to be backstabbed. They might forgive. They won't forget. They'll never forget. But they're incredibly forgiving, though. Ultimately, they have the space. You've got to prove yourself. You got to bring it. If you cheat on me, we got to work out what happened there. But Taurus has given themselves so completely to the other person that they will fight and carve their way to make sure that they can continue to surrender to the person through that Mars ruling the 12th and the 7th house. Taurus is not one to be taken advantage of typically, but anybody with bad planetary situations can have difficulty with communication, difficulty with love, difficulty with romantic and relationship hygiene, even Taurus. It all depends on the individual chart. Now, of course, there is a difference between the sun and the rising sign. I often like to read about the rising sign from two different books. One of them is what we just read, which was Isabel M. Hickey. Izzy Hickey gives us a sort of esoteric overall picture of the rising sign. Now, for some extra information, this bit comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook. What I like about Stephen Arroyo's reading is that he tells us, this is what we usually expect from Taurus sun, when the sun is in Taurus, and this is how Taurus rising is different. For those of you who have Taurus rising, it might give you a little bit more clarity as to, you might have heard things about Taurus sign in general, but a lot of that will come from the sun being in Taurus. And the sun in Taurus is kind of stubborn. The sun does not like to be in Taurus. It has Venus for an enemy. There's a stubborn, and it's not a big fan of earth signs. So the sun develops a sort of stubbornness, as an arrogant, strong-headedness with the sun in Taurus. Taurus rising has much more play. So let's read about it. This is now Taurus Ascendant by Stephen Arroyo, another Western astrologer. What we read is that Taurus Ascendant is methodical, controlled, and has measured movements that often seem like holding a pose. They have a deep dislike of being rushed. They have strong aesthetic and pleasure-motivated streaks in their nature. Aesthetic. That's a psychedelic word to use there, because Taurus is like that with everything. Timothy Leary, I'm a big fan of, talks about something called neurogenetic harmony. Why is it that one person would do well with one person and not another? You've got your Becky, your Veronica, and your Sue. or whatever, do you like the dark black-haired girl, or do you like more of the earthy brown-haired girl, or the sort of social blonde-haired girl? I guess I'm a guy, so, for you girls, I'm sure this sounds stupid, but this is how Taurus rising can think. They can think in types. I'm recently obsessed with Final Fantasy VII. It's this game where the main character can choose two different girls. The black-haired crow girl, Tifa, or the brown-haired, down-to-earth, easygoing girl, Aerith. And everyone's in a tither of, which one's the right relationship. I guess those things happen. Soapbox type stuff. But there are two types to the male psyche, to the psyche in general. And this is how Taurus can often think, is in types like this, which, it's not such a bad thing. If you know what you like, you're going to gravitate towards it. And there's a truth to that. It's neurogenetic aesthetic harmony. Like they say in the color wheel, orange and blue go together. That's the only one I can think of. Orange and blue are classic colors that work together. Taurus has this aesthetic sense, and they can sense auras typically. And they can sense if I've got an orange aura and you've got a blue aura, that's going to have a color wheel combination that is a neurogenetic harmony. Something in our genes that work together well, that work better than I would with another person. Of course, you can be stubborn about anything, and we all have to be patient, learn who we are and the other person is to really know how it's gonna work in a relationship. So they've got a strong aesthetic and pleasure-motivated streak in their nature. Taurus can be lazy or steadily productive. Taurus rising can be lazy or steadily productive, but they still insist on doing everything in their own way and at their own pace. Now, the sign position of Venus is strongly going to affect how ambitious or dynamic this person is. Now, Taurus sun more often seems lazy than Taurus rising, probably because the sun is the essential vital energy. So the vital energy is sitting in Taurus, which is this fixed earth sign. So Taurus sun is a bit more lazy. And they also seem to be more predictively possessive. The ego of the sun is in Taurus, which has Libra on its 8th house. It has more of this ego-driven possessiveness. Taurus sun and rising, they both want to enjoy everything they do, and therefore they refuse to rush anything. It's not about putting the orange in your belly and saying, good, I've gotten that out of the way. It's all about enjoying the orange the whole way. It's almost probably a drag for a Taurus rising when the orange ends, when the sex session ends, when the thing, whatever they're doing, they enjoy the whole way through. It's like, it's too bad that that's done, but the ball's got to go down if it wants to go up. That's how you play baseball. So they refuse to rush anything, lest they interfere with the pleasure that they're deriving from the here and now. Beautiful. This is an extremely physical and sensual approach to life. And there's a strong need for closeness, affection, and security. I've seen that in Taurus moon as well. But Taurus rising is really going to color the whole chart to be this sort of person. So, beautiful. We've scratched a little bit into the nature of Taurus rising. Now, before we move on too far too fast, let's start delving a little bit into Vedic cosmology. This next bit is going to be coming from Graha Sutras by Ernst Wilhelm. The Graha Sutras is a text based on something called Parashara or Shastra. Do I have a copy of it here? My copy's upstairs. Parashara is one of the ancient sages that lived however long ago. Some people say, Parashara, I think, might have been like 4,000 years ago, possibly even further back. No, not 4,000. Probably more like between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. I should burn that in my brain as to the date here. It's hard to say because it's such antiquity going on here. But Parashara was the linchpin. He was the guy who channeled. He looked inside of himself and he saw the signs and he saw the planets and he saw the tropical zodiac. And he said to his followers, this thing is happening inside of me, and as above, so below. You'll find if you translate what I see within to the stars and planets above, you'll find, voila, astrology. So Parashara is the godfather of, some people say that this information is the key that inspired many cultures. Because there was a time when India, Greece, Egypt all came together and it was a melting pot. Whether it was India or Greece that started it all is debated. I kind of think it's India, but that's a much debated topic, at least where it comes to the tropical signs. Egypt had its own 18 sign thing going on. Hello there, Monica. Nice to see you. Looks like we got our first person hanging out with us here. Ooh, wrong button. Nice to see you, Monica. Of course, for everybody, this is a live stream, so if you have any questions, you want to say hello, you can please feel free. Now, Parashara begins his text. Hello there, Natalie. Nice to see you. Parashara begins his text by one of the first things he digs into in his text is the avatars of the planets. And the avatars show that Vishnu is the eternal living consciousness. The avatar... I'm live on two different ones. What? One says Taurus rising, the other live. Oh. Thank you, Monica. All right, so it sounds like there's something I gotta fix here. Monica is my ground control, and I love you so much for it, Monica. Now it says I'm live on both. So, gosh. Hello there, everybody, on the Pluto transit video. Now, I wonder if I end the stream here. Oh, man, that would be such a bummer. If I end the stream on my Pluto transit video, is it going to end the stream on my Taurus video? I think we got to try it, folks, because it's silly for me to have two videos going at once. So if you're watching the video which says Pluto transit Aquarius chart, I have about 6 viewers there right now. Hello, Robin Scott, Itzel, Sasha DeFrederico, and Culebra. If you guys go on my channel, you'll find that I've got another video called Taurus Rising. And that is the video that I'm intending to do right now. So I'm going to end the Pluto transit Aquarius chart video. And hopefully this doesn't kill my stream. If it does, I'm going to come back on. We're going to continue. And I'll just have to piece these together afterwards. So thanks for those who are watching on the Pluto transit Aquarius video. Look for that video this coming Saturday. So I'm going to end it now. I'll see you guys in just a minute on the Taurus Rising video. Hopefully.